Hello everyone, I welcome all you in this channel. In this video, we are going to explain the poem A Prayer for My Daughter, which was composed by the famous poet W.B. Yeats. So before explaining the poem, we must know about a little introduction of the poet. So, full name of W.B. Yeats is William Butler Yeats, who was born in Dublin in 1865. His lifespan is divided almost equally between the 19th and 20th century. He was born of Protestant parents. His father, John Butler, was a painter and he received his early education in London but later shifted to Dublin where he studied art for about 3 years. He didn't receive formal education at a university and regretted this throughout his life. He founded the Irish Literary Society in 1891 and was responsible some years later for the Irish Literary Theatre. He concentrated on ancient songs and legends of Ireland. He was elected to the Senate of the Irish Free States. He was given the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1923. He was married in 1917. His works may be divided into four phases, corresponding to which we have the four stages in the developments of his poetic style. He started writing in the tradition of the Pre-Raphaelites, and the poetry of this phase has a dreamlike atmosphere and the style is highly ornamental. The lake, the lake Isle of Innisfree belongs to this period. After his marriage, he started the periods of his interest in theosophy, physical phenomena, and mysticism in general. He developed his own private symbolism. The mysticism of the East also attracted him. The final phase of its career was marked by a return to the passionate life, and he began writing poems as cold and passionate as the dawn. And his last phase was marked by greater austerity in style and a greater precision in the use of language. His most important plays are The Countess Kathleen, The King's Threshold, and Deirdre are famous. Yeats is well known for his The Wild Swans at Pully, Michael Roberts and the Dancer, The Tower and the Winding Star, and his earliest works are The Wanderings of Origins, Emperor the Irish Legends. His other famous works are The Wind Among the Reeds, which was published in 1899, in The Seven Woods, which was published in 1903, The Green Helmet, which was published in 1910, and A Vision, and last poem was published in 1939. So this is a little introduction of the poet. Now we will discuss about the theme of the poem. So, A Prayer for My Daughter was written in 1919. The poem A Prayer for My Daughter was written in 1919, a few weeks after the birth of its eldest child, a girl. The poet had purchased the old tower or castle at Thur Valley, renovated it and settled there soon after his marriage. This tower or castle forms the background to this prayer, which runs into 80 lines divided into 10 stanzas of 8 lines each. The poem expresses the poet's solitude, expressive of the poet's concerns for his young daughter Annie, who was born in 1919 when the First World War had just got over. The poem is marked by a strong protective attitude and a prayer for a balanced life of happiness for the young child. There is uncertainty and instability in the world outside. The future appears to be equally uncertain. In these circumstances, the poet prays that may the gifts of God be such as to endow the young child with qualities which would win her friends and happiness. The poet is in a gloomy mood, partly through his grave concerns at the turbulence in society and partly through anxiety for the future of the child in a world which is growing harsher and coarser every day. So, through in this poem is a, so we can say that this poem is a manifesto of its personal ideals in old age of settled life with a home and established status. The word ceremony is a key word in its and the books of courtesy. So this is the theme of the poem. Now we will explain one by one line of the poem. So come on the topic and let's start now. Once more the storm is falling and half hid under this cradle hood and coverlid my child sleeps on. There is no obstacles but grievous wood and once were hail, whereby the haystacks and roof leveling wind bread on the Atlantic can be stayed, and for an hour I have walked and prayed because of the great gloom that is in my mind. So, once more the storm is howling and half hid under this cradle hood and coverlid. My child sleeps on. There is no obstacles but gregarious wood and once bare hill whereby the haystacks and roof leveling bread on the Atlantic can be stayed, and for an hour I have walked and prayed because of the great gloom that is in mind. I have walked and prayed for this young child an hour and heard the sea wind screams upon the tower and under the arches of the bridges in the screams in the elms above the flood streams, imagining in an excited reverie that the future years had come, dancing to a frenzied drum out of the murdered innocence of the sea. So, in these lines, the poet is in a gloomy mood, partly through his grave concerns at the turbulence in society and partly through anxiety for the future of his newly born daughter, Annie Butler Yeats. He finds the poet finds that this world in which she is born is growing harsher and harsher. The poet's daughter sleeps quietly in her cradle, half hidden under the cradle hood and the coverlet. Outside, the storm is howling again. There are no barriers except Lady Gregory's wood and a bare hill which can check the speed of the stormy wind coming from the Atlantic and pulling down by sticks and house roofs. So, so here in these lines, the poet describes the outside the world, and now he describes inside of the world. Inside the poet's mind, there also blows storms of great gloom. The poet has walked and prayed for his infant daughter for about an hour. He has heard the Atlantic wind howls outside his house in the Thor Valley Tower, under the arches of his stream's bridge, and also among the elms upon the hill sides of the flooded streams. The storm has excited in him fear that the destructive future years have arrived at last, and they have come dancing to a maddening drumbeat as if out of the dangerous calm of the Atlantic. So, like an affectionate father, he prays for his daughter's safety in a world which is growing more and more useful and anarchic. So, in this stanza, the poet describes the violence of nature, seems symbolic of a large violence, the murderous innocence of the sea. The poet, the imagery recalls the mere anarchy and blood-dimmed tide of the second coming. The poet also has in mind the World War, the Irish Civil War, and the inhumanity of the modern 20th century world. In such a setting, how can this birth? The child in this cradle escape the nightmare of violence to be born in Bethlehem when the rough beast of the second coming. Now, we come on the second stanza. May she be granted beauty and yet not beauty to make a stranger's eye distraught, hers before a hers before a looking glass for such, being made beautiful overmuch, considered beyond a sufficient and lost natural kindness and maybe the heart revealing and intimacy that chooses rights and never find a friend. Helen, being chosen, found life that and later had much trouble from a whistle that great queen that rose out this way, being fatherless could have her way, yet choose a bandy less smith for it's certain that's fine women eat a crazy salad with their meat, whereby the horn of plenty is undone. So here the poet prays to solicit for his infant child a life of beauty. He prays that his daughter should be gifted with beauty, but he doesn't want that this beauty should make his daughter proud and cruel. Generally, it happens that exceptionally beautiful women begins to regard beauty as a complete and in itself. They forget that beauty be conducive to the happiness of life. Beautiful, proud women forget their natural feminine qualities, such as kindness and shyness. They fail to respond to the advances of even their sincere lovers. Therefore, they ultimately fail to find a suitable life partner. It wants that his beautiful daughter should never be proud of her beauty. Yes, he cites examples to explain his point. He gives examples from history and legends of beautiful women who suffered greatly. Helen of Troy was a great beauty. She found her life monotonous and dull, and later she had much trouble on account of a foolish lover called Paris. Likewise, the great beauty Queen Venus, who sprang from the foam of the sea and who, being fatherless, could have her way choose a lame iron smith for her husband. It is now evident that great beauties eat with their food such salads of pride as make them crazy. And by their craziness, their marital happiness is ruined. Thus, the image of Helen evokes that of Venus, and her union with Hephaestus evokes the memory of the equally unsuitable Maud Macready's union. The, we can say that thus the past linked up with the present and the personal with the impersonal, the scope of the poem is widened and large visits are opened to the mindest eye. Here, the poet father doesn't want that his own daughter should be an extremely beautiful woman like Helen of Troy. The poet's own experience with Morgan makes these lines doubly personal. The image of Helen evokes another figure, Aphrodite, who rose about spring. The union of Aphrodite with Hephaestus, the bandy-legged smith, leads at once to the Morgan's Ambrose marriage. So we can say that these lines give examples of extremely beautiful women like Helen, who not only suffered much but was the cause of much suffering to others, and the Greek goddess Aphrodite, who is supposed to have arisen from the sea but married a bandy-legged smith. Helen was bored and troubled by a fool, and the Green Queen repented after her marriage with a bandy-legged smith. The poet thinks that beautiful women are silly, so that their happiness suffers. Therefore, the poet prays to God not to make his daughter so beautiful as to make her vain and proud. While making this prayer, the poet has in mind the proud and obstinate Maud Gonne and how she rejected the poet's passionate and devoted love.